Welcome to Crusader Media. I am Josh. Today we're going to talk about the Battle of Manzikert. The Battle of Manzikert is a decisive battle in world history. It's a very seminal battle. Unfortunately, it is a battle that many people in the West have forgotten. However, it is a battle that is very celebrated in Turkey. So the Battle of Manzikert, just to give you upfront, it took place in 1071. It pitted the Byzantine Empire, or the Eastern Roman Empire, even though we call it Byzantium. They consider themselves to be Romans. The term Byzantine was first coined in the 16th century. It didn't really take off till the 17th and 18th century with Enlightenment writers, but for the purpose of the video, this is the Byzantine Empire, and they're facing against the Seljuk Turks. The Byzantine Empire was led by Romanos IV Diogenes. He's going to be the general in the Battle of Manzikert, and the Turks are led by Alp Arslan, a very fantastic general. Both of these two gentlemen are fantastic generals. I would argue that Alp Arslan was significantly better. We'll get a little more into that. So this battle, one of the reasons why it is so decisive is what it's truly led to the eventual Crusades. The Battle of 1071 is what would lead to 1095, where the Emperor Alexios would reach out to the West in March 1095 to call for Western military assistance, and Pope Urban II in 27 November 1095 with the Council of Clermont would make the call for the First Crusade. So the Byzantine Empire they've been struggling with Islam for 300, 400 years. So the Muslims that they're struggling with in the first century are the Arab Muslims. The Arab Muslims, they have swept through Christian Middle East, Christian North Africa. They've been in inroads into Europe. Not only are they attacking the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople, they've made inroads into Spain, Portugal, the Iberian Peninsula. They also were making big inroads into France before at the Battle of Tours. They were turned around by Charles the Hammer Martel. So Islam is spreading fast. It's already taken over multiple ecclesiastical centers of Christianity. It's taken over the center of Jerusalem, Antioch, Alexandria, and the only two ones that are left are Constantinople and Rome. So if Islam takes over Constantinople, then there's only one of these centers left, and that is Rome. So, I'm going to talk about the Battle of Manzikert when I close. Hopefully, I'm not going to take too broad of a stroke here, but I'm also going to talk about what I consider to be the wolves within. So, going back to the Battle of Manzikert, we're going to hear about how Romanos IV Diogenes could have been an excellent leader. He could have really expanded the Byzantine Empire's prosperity. A lot of the stuff that the Byzantine Empire was doing that was starting to make it decline a little bit, he could have really turned that down. However, he was taken down by the scheming Doukas family and other Byzantine nobles. So what the Battle of Manzikert reminds us, more than just battle tactics, battle maps, it also reminds us in the greater context of what my channel is trying to achieve, that is not only the outside forces that we need to be on watch for in the West, we need to be thinking about the inside forces that are trying to take us down as well. So back to the Battle of Manzikert proper. On August 26, 1071, the Seljuk Turks, led by Alp Arslan, routed the Byzantine army under Emperor Romanos IV Diogenes. Although this battle is largely forgotten among Westerners, as I said, it is a celebrated event in Turkey. Historians strongly agree that this battle, nearly 4 centuries before the fall of Constantinople in 1453 to Mehmet the Great, truly marked the beginning of the Byzantine Empire's decline and ultimately sealed its fate. Fueled by internal betrayal and external pressures, the Battle of Manzikert was the critical turning point that set Byzantium on an irreversible path towards its eventual collapse. So as I've already said, the Byzantine Empire had nearly collapsed with the rise of Islam. Once again, Arab Muslims have swept through Christendom. Just insane conquering. I mean, just conquests. Even though we know that I am against Islamic conquests, they were impressive. They were amazing. They were super fast. The Islamic armies were excellent warriors. They understood tactics. They understood logistics. And they just, I mean, it was sort of an old school style blitzkrieg. Just, they kept coming through and just using excellent tactics with encirclements. They were phenomenal at fighting in desert environments. And you look at the maps that I've been showing in this video, you see how quickly they swept through Christendom. So Byzantium managed to survive not only through superior logistics, fortifications, and even excellent mercenaries, which unfortunately we'll see later in Byzantium's history, the quality of the mercenaries dropped drastically. They also had another secret weapon, and that was Greek fire. So Greek fire is a potent weapon that remains a mystery to modern scientists, yet it is well documented in both Christian and Muslim sources. So it doesn't come across as hagiography. When you look at all the primary sources, this was a real thing. We just don't know how to recreate it yet. And the Byzantine Empire also had skillful diplomacy and strategic fortifications that protected key territories and maintained the empire's resilience. So there's a newish British historian that I'm a big fan of, Nick Holmes. He termed the Battle of Manzikert in the subsequent First Crusade as a Byzantine World War. He, and I will say incorrectly, called the Battle of Manzikert as the starting point for the centuries-long clash between West and East. I'm a big fan of this guy. Unfortunately, he relies very heavily on Gibbon and Runciman, which I do not at all recommend you to look at. If you want to look at the true history of the Crusades, you need to be looking at different authors. One of the great authors is Thomas F. Madden. His book, The Concise History of the Crusades, it overturns a lot of the popular Crusade myths that were very much propagated by men like Edward Gibbon and Stephen Runciman. However, Nick Holmes, like Gibbon and Runciman, has a wonderful writing style. In his book, The Byzantine World War, as well as his books on the fall of the Roman Empire, are excellent reads. Check them out. Just take them with a grain of salt, but highly recommend them. You can find his books very decently priced on Amazon. So the defeat at Manzikert triggered a military crisis in Byzantium, leading Emperor Alexios I Komnenos, hopefully I pronounced that right, I struggle with the Byzantine names, to request military assistance from the Catholic Church in 1095. This request sparked the First Crusade, the recapture of Jerusalem, and the establishment of the Crusader states, known as Outremer. This is just a French term for overseas. So the Crusader states, Outremer, it just means overseas. So while the historical significance of these events has led to extensive scholarship, the most important lessons lie in the dangers of ambition, the perils of placing personal interests above the greater good, and the reality that popularity does not equate to effectiveness. So Romanos IV Diogenes, though not a popular emperor, for instance, he was a very strict disciplinarian, he struggled to manage the vast Byzantine Empire. But despite his flaws, I would argue that he was the best candidate to address Byzantium's challenge at the time. Basically, the right man for the right time. Not perfect, but the right man. So as a war hero, Romanos had a solid, if imperfect, plan to deal with the Seljuk Turks. His ambition, energy, and forceful nature made him a formidable leader. Recognizing that the Turks responded to military force, he quickly mobilized an army to push the Seljuks back. I want to take a real quick step aside real fast. So this is 1071. I've talked about Islamic conquests. I won't go into this too deeply, but we do need to differentiate between the different Islamic invasions. So Islamic invasions have been going on for several hundred years. The Arabs have been sweeping through all of Christendom. They were stopped at Tours. We're already seeing them in Spain. We're going to see the Reconquista be triggered. But the Arab Muslims have kind of been stopped, so to speak. once they were turned back at Constantinople multiple times, they're struggling to continue forward. They're still invading, they're still hostile, they're still aggressive, but Byzantium has been able to hold the various Arab Muslims in check. But now you have the Turks, and the Turks are on a whole nother level. They're fantastic warriors. Like the Mongols they'll come after, they're excellent cavalrymen. They're wonderful at encirclement tactics. They use light cavalry. They're very quick. They take a lot of what we've already seen with Arab tactics, and they just do it even better. They are phenomenal warriors. And the Seljuk Turks that we'll see in 1071, these are the precursor to what will eventually be the Ottoman Turks that will cause the collapse of Constantinople in 1453, which will then become the center of the Ottoman Empire, and Constantinople's name will change to Istanbul. All right, so back to Manzikert. So, Romanos, he's facing powerful opponents within the Byzantine bureaucracy, a challenge that is ultimately going to lead to his downfall. The Doukas family, they're a prominent Byzantine elite family. They harbor an intense hatred for Romanos, and they play a key role in both his and the empire's demise. So Romanos, he enters the Battle of Manzikert with a big numerical advantage. He has a solid tactical formation. He has everything in place to where he should, in theory, defeat the Seljuk Turks in Manzikert. However, despite all of his best efforts, he is undermined by the betrayal of, here's another one of those names, Andronicus Doukas, the son of his primary rival, John Doukas. So at a critical moment during the battle, Andronicus exploited confusion among the ranks and fled with his 30,000 reserve troops, leaving Romanos' retreat unprotected. The Turks quickly surrounded the Byzantine forces, leading to Romanos' capture. I just talked about how the Seljuk Turks, like the Mongols, are fantastic with their light cavalry at doing encirclement tactics, that very speedy mobile warfare. The reserve troops, they stay in the back. They help prevent this stuff, prevent your camp from being attacked, give you more forces when you're losing forces, but also bolster and help prevent the encirclement of the main effort. That's more military operations, but losing these 30,000 troops is huge. And what it does, it just plays right into Alp Arslan's hand. He's a fantastic military commander. He sees the opportunity, and like all good military commanders, he exploits it. So Romanos is captured, and he is subsequently humiliated by Alp Arslan. However, Alp Arslan does show him mercy, and he releases Romanos with a large ransom and an agreement for annual tribute. The Doukas family, they immediately seize the opportunity to install Michael VII Doukas on the throne. So despite Romanos' injuries from battle, he attempts to reclaim his throne, but he is decisively defeated by the Doukas troops and is subsequently blinded with a red-hot iron. And just imagine the horrific injuries from this, okay? He is blinded with the red-hot iron. This is 1071. So already a horrific treatment, but there's also, horrific thing to do to somebody, but there's not the medical treatment that we have in the 21st century. So he gets a horrible infection, and this infection kills him. So the Doukas' family's selfishness led to the complete Turkification of Anatolia and the irreversible loss of Byzantine power in the region. Their incompetence rendered them wholly unfit for leadership in the Byzantine throne. This incompetence would, as I said, lead to pleas to the West for military assistance 24 years later, the calls to the West in 1095 for military assistance to the East. Pope Urban II will preach a crusade, most famously in 27 November 1095 at the Council of Clermont, where he details in graphic detail all of the horrible atrocities that the Turks are committing on their Eastern Christian brothers. So, due to deceptive political maneuvering, jealousy, selfishness, and lust for power, the Byzantine career politicians set the empire on its trajectory to non-existence 382 years later. So moving forward from the Battle of Manzikert to the 21st century, What are some lessons that we can learn from this? How do we take this battle that happened in 1071 and how do we apply it to 2025 and beyond? So look how far the West has fallen in its freedoms simply from the people on the inside. And this is not just America. I'm from America, but this is also Europe. I've posted a video, a short, maybe a week ago, talking about how a Spanish priest was arrested, is facing potentially 3 years in prison because he spoke out about Islam and just said how it was incompatible with Christianity. They weren't open for Muslims weren't open for interfaith dialogue, and that in Muslim-dominated countries, Christians are persecuted. Now he's facing 3 years in prison. What does that have to say for Western freedom? That shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't be happening in any country, but the West is supposed to be the champion of freedom of speech and other rights. Think about all the great literature that we've had come out of the West, and now this Spanish priest is facing that. Also, while other countries have external threats, we as Christians have sat idly by and watched so many of our freedoms evaporate, and we have watched evil flourish. Just look at all the events that have been happening over the last years. Look at all the division. Look at how evil is celebrated. And these aren't the cause of a lurking Turkish army. These are our own people. And I'm not trying to get political here, but let's remember all the people who celebrated the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Just the evil messages on social media, how much they celebrated his murder. Just the bloodthirstiness of it. These are our own fellow citizens. Why is this happening? This are the people inside our country. So evil and darkness have been slowly growing in America, and we've stayed silent. Part of it is maybe we're afraid to be called a mean name. Maybe we're afraid of name calling. We're afraid to be called a fascist or whatever the flavor of the week is. But we have to look at our ancestors in the West, the Byzantines in the East, but then like just the Crusaders. We have to look at how they faced enslavement by the Turks, torture, the loss of their lands. They literally sacrificed their lives. They traveled all the way across from England, France, wherever to help protect fellow Christians. They sacrificed all of that, and now we have Christians in our country, in the West, that are afraid of being called names, so they don't speak up. If we are too afraid to speak up because someone might hurt our feelings and call us a mean name, then we are complicit in the darkness that is currently consuming the West. As Christians, Protestant or Catholic, we should deeply care about the Battle of Manzikert, because it reminds us what happens when internal corruption and cowardice rot a nation from within. The fall of Byzantium was not solely caused by the strength of the Turks, but by the weakness of its own people, their divisions, their betrayals, their unwillingness to stand united for truth. The Crusades that followed were born out of desperation to preserve what was left of Christendom. Today, we are facing a similar moment. The wolves are not only at the gate, they're among us. They're wearing the faces of comfort, compromise, and moral apathy. If we fail to speak truth, defend our faith, and stand firm in conviction, we will meet the same fate as the Byzantines. We will lose our heritage. We'll lose our freedom and our faith to the very forces we refuse to confront. Manzikert is not just a medieval tragedy to read about and cast aside forgotten. The Battle of Manzikert is a mirror for our own time. God bless you. Get into church, pray, read your Bible, but most importantly, remember that God loves you.